Chapter 641. Wah, what are you doing? Dahlia's expression changed as she struggled to free herself. She looked more alluring as she struggled desperately. Don't you like playing games? I'll play with you until you're satisfied. Dustin's expression was cold. You're a lunatic. Stop this at once. Dahlia cried out angrily. Dustin commented, You're still pretending. The skin on your face has peeled off. Haven't you noticed? What? Dahlia's eyes widened, and she touched her face instinctively. However, she quickly came back to her senses. It didn't matter if her face was disfigured, her actions had already given her away. I thought my acting skills were pretty good. I didn't expect you to see through it that quickly. Once she found out she was exposed, Dahlia stopped the act and pulled forcefully near her ear. Soon, a human mask was peeled off. Dahlia was gone, and she was replaced by an unfamiliar woman. The woman looked decent, but her complexion was ghastly pale. Her gaze was sinister and malicious. She was the epitome of a female fatale. Who are you? Why are you impersonating Dahlia? Dustin questioned her coldly. If you want me to answer you, you would need to answer me first. How did you find out? The woman was curious. Her mentor had taught her the face-changing art personally. She could not only change her appearance, she was also good at reading people immediately, allowing her to impersonate them better. She wasn't confident enough to say that it was a perfect resemblance, but it was at least 90% similar. At her level, even close relatives wouldn't be able to notice in a short time. Hence, she couldn't understand how Dustin had figured it out shortly after they met. Your technique is impressive. It's hard to find fault with your appearance. However, you overlooked a few details. First, Dahlia never uses perfume, but you carried a faint smell with you. Second, with Dahlia's born personality, she would never believe someone that easily. That evidence wouldn't be to convince her. Your seductive performance earlier was also clearly done to get my guard. The last thing would be your dominant hand. Perhaps you didn't notice, but you used your eye to hold the cup earlier, which is not Dahlia's dominant hand. I may not have seen through you if it were just one suspicious detail, but with all of them put together, it was obvious that you were an imposter. Dustin commented coldly, exposing her flaws. In truth, there was another detail he hadn't mentioned, and that was that he had grown more cautious after going through a similar situation. The woman chuckled. I can't believe you have such keen observation skills. You're truly amazing to be able to catch such small details. After today's experience, it seemed like she would need to put in more work on the details. I'm going to kill you. In her fury, she took out a dagger and aimed it toward Dustin's throat. A slap rang out as Dustin struck Dahlia mercilessly, causing her to fall to the floor. The dagger slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the ground as well. You. Dahlia's face was disfigured. She was about to get up when Dustin grabbed her by the throat and pinned her against the wall. Ugh. Dahlia gasped for breath, and her face flushed red. She struggled to free herself but to no avail. Dustin's grip was like an iron vice that clamped tightly around her neck. How are you planning on avenging your brother with your meager strength? With just one hand, Dustin lifted her off the ground. Why? Dahlia was aghast. She never expected Dustin to suddenly turn hostile and forget about the past relationship. She could even see the intent to kill in his cold eyes. Why? You should ask yourself that. Dustin sneered coldly. Is it fun playing such childish tricks in front of me? Are you tired of living? What nonsense are you spouting? Have you gone crazy? Dahlia was shocked and afraid. So, you're not going to admit it? All right, two can play this game. Dustin snorted and reached out his hand. With a forceful tug, Dahlia's clothes were torn into shreds and revealed her enticing, voluptuous figure. She looked extremely provocative. Chapter 642. The group of masked women brandished a knife and held it dangerously close to Dahlia's neck. A thin line of blood could be seen on her skin. It was a warning that Dahlia would be killed on the spot if Dustin made any sudden movements. Dustin furrowed his brow and ultimately released his grip. He wasn't going to risk Dahlia's life with the numbers they had. That's more like it. Astrid stretched her neck. She looked triumphant as she said, Dustin, you should feel honored that my mentor has taken an interest in you. As long as you agree, we will be a family going forward. And if you refuse, you and everyone else around you will die. Do you have to go to such extremes? Dustin's expression was frosty. This is how we do things. If we can't get our hands on a talented genius like you, you must be destroyed, Astrid responded. Do you really think you can kill me? Dustin retorted. Astrid chuckled as she said, I know you're talented, but we came prepared. I added tranguran to the tea you drank earlier. The poison is colorless and tasteless. Once ingested, your body will feel weak, and you won't even be able to use your true energy. Judging by the time, you should be feeling its effects right about now. Tranqueran. Dustin's expression shifted. Tranqueran was one of the 10 exotic medicines of the martial world. Although it wasn't deadly, it was the bane of many martial artists. It suppressed the true energy and weakened their bodies. These two effects of Tranquil were enough to put any martial artist in despair. He didn't expect Astrid to get a hold of it when it was nearly extinct. Give me the antidote. Dustin reached out to grab Astrid but stumbled and nearly fell. Before he knew it, sweat started to form on his forehead. Tranqueran is specifically meant to restrain expert martial artists like you. The more you exert true energy, the faster the medicine takes effect. How about it? Do you feel it already? Astrid grinned. To put Dustin under their control, the Dark Lord employed his precious treasure, which highlighted Dustin's value. Dustin, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you going to submit to us or not? Astrid yelled. Dream on. Dustin forced himself to remain upright. HMPH. You're still talking back. Are you not afraid of death? Astrid's expression darkened. She was out of patience. If it weren't for the Dark Lord valuing him greatly, Astrid would have killed him much earlier instead of wasting her time persuading him. Although Tranqueran is powerful, I still have enough strength to make sure we die together. Dustin spat out coldly. You. Astrid was seething in anger. Just as she was about to make a move on Dahlia, a graceful figure descended from the second floor. Astrid, this guy is too stubborn. You won't get anywhere by using force. Why don't you let me talk to him? Azalea walked up to Dustin seductively. Azalea, you'll be able to persuade him. Astrid raised an eyebrow. Have you forgotten what I'm best at, Astrid? Azalea smiled. All right, go ahead and try. Astrid nodded. Azalea was not only good at face-changing art, but she was also skilled at the art of charming. She could make any man fall for her charms. Hey, doctor. We will meet again. Azalea took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat off Dustin's forehead. Does it feel bad? How about we go up and have a rest? Cut the crap. Dustin pushed her hand aside and uttered coldly, I will never collude with you. People. Why are you making this so hard, doctor? Azalea sighed lightly. If you join us and become my junior, we'll be together forever. Wouldn't that be great? What utter rubbish. Dustin glared at her. You want me to join you after I've witnessed you using such underhanded methods. Dream on. I know my actions have been impudent, but I have no other choice. I cherish you a lot, and I'd do anything for you, Azalea smiled as she said. Dustin sneered. If that is so, kill Astrid first, then. No problem. With a smile still on her face, Azalea suddenly drew her sword and stabbed Astrid's chest. Chapter 643. Ugh. Astrid froze. Astrid looked at Azalea, who had a smile on her face, and then down at the sword in her chest. She was filled with shock and disbelief. She never imagined that Azalea would kill her without hesitation when she was smiling cheerfully just a second ago. There weren't any signs throughout the entire situation. What? Dustin was also bewildered at the sudden turn of events. He had casually mentioned it without expecting anything to happen. He would never have imagined that Azalea would not only take it seriously but also act without hesitation and plunge her sword straight into her senior's chest. He wondered if this woman was ruthless or just truly insane. "Why?" Astrid spat out the words with difficulty, glaring at Azalea with wide eyes. Mixed emotions flashed across her face: disbelief, fury, resentment, and defiance. But above all, confusion clouded her face. She couldn't understand why Azalea would kill her. Was it solely based on Dustin's words? "Don't look at me like that, Astrid. You heard him. He asked me to kill you. I'm in a difficult position as well. You won't blame me, will you?" Astrid put on an innocent act. "You." Astrid was about to say something when she spat out a mouthful of blood. "Look at you, you soiled my clothes." Azalea patted the blood stains on her clothes in disgust before pulling out her sword forcefully. Following the sound of a sharp whistle, blood gushed from Astrid's chest, and her body went limp. She collapsed to the ground as life drained from her. "Azalea, what are you doing?" The group of masked women was shocked to see Astrid fall. They never imagined that they would end up turning against each other. "You shall fall too." Azalea opened up her palm and blew lightly at the masked women, creating a crimson mist that enveloped everyone present. Soon, the unsuspecting group of people, including Dahlia, fell unconscious to the ground. They had set up various foolproof measures to deal with Dustin. However, they had failed to anticipate and have the guard up against the presence of a traitor. "Hey Azalea, you crazy woman. I can't believe you betrayed us. The Dark Lord will never forgive you." With her last breath, Astrid lifted her finger with difficulty, her expression filled with resentment. "You don't need to worry about that, Astrid. Just go peacefully." Azalea bent down and stabbed her once more, relaxing only after she was certain Astrid was dead. After that, Azalea turned to face Dustin and smiled as she asked, "What do you think? Are you satisfied, Doctor?" "I don't understand. What do you mean by this?" Dustin frowned slightly, her actions coming off as strange. "You said to kill Astrid earlier, so I helped you to do so. Is there a problem?" Azalea tilted her head in confusion. Dustin could feel his eye twitching, and he added, "But she's your senior from the same guild. What about it? Isn't it normal for members of the same guild to kill each other in the martial world?" Azalea said it like it was a natural occurrence. "You're truly insane." Dustin shook his head. He could tell that the woman in front of him was not mentally stable. Chapter 644. "Doctor, not only did I betray my guild for you, but I also killed my senior. You're so mean for calling me that." Azalea pouted with a bitter expression. "What exactly are you trying to do?" Dustin questioned her. "Don't overthink it. I just want to be friends with you, nothing more," Azalea said with a grin. "I don't think I can afford to be your friend. There might come a day where you'd thrust a knife into my back," Dustin responded bluntly. "Hey, I can't bear to do that. Besides, if anyone is thrusting anything, it'd be you." She smiled charmingly. The corners of Dustin's mouth twitched upon hearing her words. Did this woman just make a dirty joke? "If there's nothing else, I'm leaving." Unwilling to stay any longer, Dustin prepared to leave and picked up the unconscious Dahlia. "Hold on." Azalea suddenly took out a small vial and passed it to Dustin. "This is the antidote for Tranquil. You should take it. Otherwise, you'll have serious long-term effects." "There's no need. I wasn't poisoned." Dustin shook his head. Azalea was taken aback. "You weren't poisoned. But you were sweating and lost your strength. You guys can't be the only ones allowed to act, don't you think?" Dustin replied nonchalantly. Although Tranquirin was powerful, it was only effective against martial artists below the rank of grandmasters. When used against grandmasters, its effects were greatly diminished. The remaining effects of the poison would be easily neutralized. "You pretended so well that even I couldn't tell." Azalea was in shock for a moment, then she rolled her eyes. If I had known you weren't poisoned, I wouldn't have taken such a big risk and killed my senior. I just put myself in trouble. I appreciate your goodwill. Consider me indebted to you this time. Dustin changed the subject. No matter how he could have settled the situation himself, she did help him and even gave him the antidote voluntarily. Naturally, he had to accept her kindness. I'm reassured by your words. Azalea chuckled and gave a satisfied smile. Oh, by the way, you need to stab me before you go. Stab you? Why? Dustin was perplexed. We should complete the show. My seniors are dead, and I won't be able to explain it to my mentor if I return back unharmed. So, I need your help to stab me in the chest. Azalea opened up her coat as she spoke, revealing her voluptuous bosom. Is that necessary? Dustin frowned. The Dark Lord is not a good person. The venomous curse has been dispelled from your body anyway. He won't be able to control you any longer. Why do you still continue to be his disciple? I didn't expect you to care about me, Doctor. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll leave when the time is right, but now is not the time. Azalea smirked. I'm just giving you advice. The specifics are up to you. Dustin left it to her to decide instead. Come now. Leave me a memento. Azalea spread her arms as if she was ready to be slaughtered. Dustin was helpless. He had no choice but to pick up a dagger and stab her in the chest. His aim was precise, avoiding any lethal areas and sensitive parts. Azalea hissed. That really hurt. You got stabbed for no reason. Of course, it hurt. Dustin took out a pill and handed it to her, saying, This is Hemotril. It'll help you heal faster. Take it when you see fit. Thanks, Doctor. Azalea smiled sweetly. It appeared as if she remembered something as she suddenly said, Oh, right. It'll be the new year soon. Ask the Harmons to be careful. They might have a difficult year ahead. My mentor, the Dark Lord, has arrived at Millsburg. He might even step in personally. I understand. Thanks for the warning. Dustin nodded. Though was the Dark Lord finally appearing after laying low for so long? Hell, they could take the necessary precautions soon and to notify the Harmons so. Chapter 645. The next morning, at Nicholson Corp. Dahlia woke up groggily and found herself lying on the sofa of her office. She was covered with a thick blanket, and there was even a steaming glass of milk on the table beside her. Last night's events were still fuzzy to her, and she rubbed her head, which was throbbing slightly in pain. Feeling parched, she picked up the glass of milk and finished it in one go. It made her feel warm inside, giving her a slight relief from the discomfort she was feeling. Dahlia, you're awake. At that moment, Dustin walked in with the breakfast that he had just bought. Why are you here? Dahlia's brows creased into a frown, and her expression turned cold. I didn't know where you lived, so I brought you back to your office for the night. As he was talking, he took out a takeaway container with a full English breakfast inside as well as a bowl of chicken soup. I'm asking why you are here. Dahlia asked in exasperation. Have you forgotten about what happened last night? Dustin was confused. Last night. Dahlia recollected her thoughts, and last night's events became clearer. She remembered being drugged and found herself tied up when she woke up. Her kidnapper had intended to threaten Dustin with her, but it seemed like their plan had failed. It's all right if you don't remember. The drug is still in your system, so you'll feel groggy for the time being. Here, eat up first. Dustin passed the steaming hot chicken soup to Dahlia. Go away. I don't need you putting on an act here. Dahlia was ruthless as she slapped the bowl of chicken soup to the ground. Her tone was frosty as she said, Don't think I'll be grateful to you just because you saved my life last night, you murderer. She couldn't act like nothing had happened when her brother passed away a few days ago. Dustin shook his head. Dahlia, your brother's death has nothing to do with me. They saw you. My mother saw you. Are you telling me they are lying? Dahlia bellowed. They only saw what happened on the surface. They're not aware of the truth. Dustin turned solemn before he continued, I did beat James up, but that doesn't mean I killed him. He was poisoned to death. Someone is trying to frame me and get in between us. Fine. You said you were framed. Where's the evidence? How are you going to prove your innocence? Dahlia questioned. I found the murder weapon. And I have your brother's autopsy results. You'll find that it is suspicious if you examine it in detail. Dustin took out the evidence he carried with him constantly and displayed it in front of Dahlia. This is just a piece of paper and a needle. Do you think I'll believe you with just these? Dahlia remained unyielding. An autopsy report could be fabricated with money. It was not persuasive whatsoever. Dahlia, we've been married for 3 years. You should know my character. I've never done anything to hurt you, Dustin said seriously. I used to think I knew you well. However, I've come to realize that I can't see through you at all. Dahlia's expression was icy. The more she interacted with him, the more she found him shrouded in a veil of mystery. No matter how hard she tried to unravel his true intentions, she was unable to read him. This was exactly why she struggled to trust him. Dustin lifted 3 fingers. Dahlia, I swear. I didn't kill your brother. What's the point of saying all this? Everyone thinks you're the murderer. I can't forgive you. Please, get out. Dahlia pointed at the door, ordering him to leave. She was afraid that her resolve would weaken if he continued speaking. Despite her lingering feelings for Dustin, she couldn't forgive him on behalf of her late brother. Dahlia, I'm doing all I can to find the murderer. Just give me a little more time. I'll definitely be able to prove my innocence. Dustin swore. Are you still trying to argue at this point? Dahlia gritted her teeth. If you had repented sincerely, you may have had a chance. But you're not only escaping responsibility. You're making up all kinds of excuses right now. I'm really disappointed in you. I don't want to see you ever again. Leave immediately. What exactly do I need to do for you to believe me? Dustin furrowed his brows. You want me to believe you? Fine. If you jump down from here to prove your innocence, I'll believe you. Dahlia spat out in a fit of anger. Chapter 646. Since they were on the 30th floor, anyone who jumped down from that height would not be able to survive. Dahlia was trying to get Dustin to back down and leave. All right, I'll jump. Dustin nodded. Without hesitation, he turned and crashed through the full-length glass window, hurtling down from the 30th floor. Dahlia stood frozen on the spot, her mind blank with disbelief. The words had only escaped her lips in a fit of anger. She never would have imagined that Dustin would follow through with her demand. Dustin! Dahlia screamed after returning to her senses. She rushed toward the shattered window and looked down. Dustin had vanished from sight. She knew that no ordinary person would survive such a bone-shattering fall. Her legs gave away, and she collapsed to the ground with a thud. While she sat on the ground, she could not hold back her tears. Why? Why did it turn out like this? Dustin, why did you jump? How can you be so foolish? What am I supposed to do now that you're gone? What should I do? Dahlia sobbed uncontrollably, her tears streaming steadily down her cheeks. She was filled with regret. She regretted her impulsive words that were spoken in the heat of the moment. She regretted not trusting Dustin, and she regretted forcing him to prove his innocence by taking his own life. Ultimately, she was the cause of his death. Dustin, I believe you now. Come back. Please, come back. Dahlia was so distraught, she was weeping bitterly. She longed for everything to be a dream, wishing that it was all just an illusion. As long as she woke up, Dustin would be standing before her once again. This is my fault. I caused your death. My brother is gone, and now you're gone too. There's no reason for me to continue living. Wait for me, I'll meet you soon. Dahlia staggered to her feet, moving toward the windows with a determined expression. Hey, where are you going to meet me? Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice behind her. At that moment, she froze, thunderstruck. Her eyes widened, and she stiffly turned her head around. Dustin had just leaped down the building moments ago, but now he was standing unscathed before her. She froze. Doubting her own eyes, she rubbed them. Wasn't he dead? How did he come back to life? Don't worry. I'm not dead. However, you can't go back on your words now. You said you believed me. Dustin smiled gently. As soon as he said that, Dahlia flung herself heavily into his arms. You lunatic. You're a real lunatic. Who told you to jump? Don't you cherish your life? Do you know how worried I was? What would I have done if you had died? Tears streamed down Dahlia's face as she pounded relentlessly on Dustin's chest with both fists, taking out her pent-up grievances on him. But it didn't satiate her anguish, and she sank her teeth forcefully into his shoulder. In the end, she hugged him tightly, afraid that he would suddenly vanish into thin air. Chapter 647. All right, that's enough. Stop crying. Can't you see I'm alive and well? Dustin patted Dahlia's back, consoling her. This was the first time they were wrapped in such a tight embrace. Dustin could not only smell the natural body scent she emanated, but he could also feel her voluptuous breasts pressing against his chest. It distracted him momentarily. HMPH. But you almost died earlier. Dahlia pounded on his chest again. I had no choice. You were the one who told me to jump. Dustin put on an innocent expression. You jumped just because I told you so. Why don't you eat shit too if I ask you? Dahlia's tone was upset. Hey, that's too much, Dustin replied awkwardly. Eating shit is too much, but jumping down a building is not. What exactly were you thinking? Dahlia jabbed a finger against Dustin's forehead. I was too impulsive earlier. I promise there won't be another time, Dustin admitted to his faults. He had witnessed the entire scene earlier, where Dahlia cried inconsolably upon realizing he had jumped off the building. She was even willing to follow him into the afterlife. He wasn't only surprised, he was also delighted. This was the first time he understood how important he meant to her. HMPH. It's your life. I don't care, so do whatever you want. Dahlia wiped her tears away before her expression hardened. One more thing. Although I believe that you have nothing to do with my brother's death for now, that doesn't mean this situation is over. I'm going to find the murderer and avenge James. Leave it to me. I'll find the murderer. I've sent someone to investigate. I believe there will be news soon. Dustin was serious. He wouldn't let the person who dared frame him off that easily. Whoever it was, he was going to make sure they paid the price. Hey. What are you two doing? Suddenly, they heard someone cry out by the door. It was Florence, Victoria, and Julie, walking in angrily. You son of a bitch. How dare you show up here when you killed my son? Florence erupted in anger when she saw Dustin. Her expression was menacing. I told you. I have nothing to do with James' death. Dustin shook his head. The evidence is as clear as day, and yet you're still denying it. Florence's tone was dripping with resentment as she said, no matter what you say, I'm going to send you to prison. She was about to make a move when Dahlia suddenly stood in front of her. Hold on. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. Dustin is not the murderer. What? Florence was stunned. She looked at Dahlia in disbelief. Dahlia, have you gone crazy? How can you defend this bastard? Mom, I feel sad about James' death too, but we can't let hatred cloud our judgment. Dahlia picked up the report from the table and showed it to them. This is James' autopsy report. It shows that he died from poisoning. Dustin didn't kill him. It's all a big misunderstanding. Nonsense. I won't believe any autopsy report. I will only believe what I saw with my own eyes, and I saw Dustin kill him. Florence gritted her teeth. That's right. It's just a piece of paper. Dustin might have fabricated the results to clear his name. Julie chimed in. Dahlia, You need to stay resolute. Don't be deceived by his sweet words. Victoria warned her. It's real, take a closer look. There's an official stamp and a doctor's signature. We can get it verified anytime. Dahlia tried to persuade the three of them. Verified? My ass. Florence snatched the autopsy report and ripped it to shreds. I don't care where he got this damn thing. I won't believe it. I'm going to bring him to justice today. Mom, if you don't believe him, you should at least believe in me, right? I can assure you that he isn't the murderer. Dahlia was serious. Dustin's actions earlier had already proven his innocence. Moreover, if he were truly the killer, why would he go to such great lengths to obtain evidence? He could have simply escaped without a trace. Chapter 648. Dahlia. Did this bastard feed you a love potion? How can you believe him? Florence was both furious and shocked. She couldn't believe her daughter had turned into such a shameful woman. She was ignoring her brother's death for the sake of a wretched man. She was even defending the killer. It was foolish behavior. I believe him because there are indeed questionable circumstances surrounding James' death. I don't wish to unjustly accuse a good man, Dahlia explained. A good man? My fucking ass. You can tell he's a wretched person just by how obnoxious and cunning he is. I must hand him over to the authorities today. Florence was unyielding, shouting, and ready to act. Mom, can you calm down? Dahlia stood in front of her mom, trying to stop her. Florence was enraged and tried to push her daughter aside. Get out of my way. The result was the same, as Dahlia stood her ground. In the end, the two started pushing each other. Mom, listen to me. This situation, before Dahlia could continue, an enraged Florence delivered a heavy slap across her face. Dahlia. What the hell are you doing? James had just passed away, and here you are defending the murderer. Don't you have a conscience? James is your brother. What kind of a sister are you? Florence fumed with rage as she screamed. Throughout her life, she had never laid a hand on her daughter until today. Florence, you can scold her and be mad all you want, but it's a little inappropriate to hit your child. Realizing that the situation was getting out of hand, Victoria tried to calm the situation. Dahlia, you're in the wrong too. How can you fight your mother for the sake of an outsider? That's right, Dahlia. Stop being stubborn and step aside. Julie reasoned as well. Dahlia kept her composure even as her cheek burned calmly. She told her mother, Mom, can you believe me this once? Give Dustin a chance to prove his innocence. I'm begging you. You. Florence was frustrated at Dahlia's behavior and was about to strike her again, but ultimately, she was unable to bring herself to do it. She knew her daughter's personality well. It was hard to change her mind once she had made a decision. Dustin finally spoke up. Give me 5 days. I'll definitely catch the murderer within 5 days. Otherwise, you can do whatever you want with me. His words were resolute. Fine. I'll give you a chance. Let's see what tricks you can come up with. Florence suppressed her anger and turned to Dahlia before saying, As for you, you're going to regret going against us for that bastard someday. And with that, Florence left, irritated. Rhys, you have 5 days. I'll be sending someone to tail you. After a final threat, Julie and her mother followed Florence out the door. I'm sorry for putting you through that. Noticing her slightly swollen cheek, Dustin felt a pang of guilt Florence hadn't held back earlier. It's nothing. Dahlia shook her head slightly. Your main priority now is to find the murderer. Otherwise, my mom will never let you off the hook. I understand. I'll take care of it right away. Dustin nodded and left soon after. The only reason he was searching for the murderer was to clear his name. However, he was now driven by a personal grudge, and it was poised to be deadly. Chapter 649. Dustin's phone suddenly rang on his way back to the Flame Dragon dojo. Abigail's voice came through on the other side of the line when he answered. Her tone was anxious as soon as she spoke. Sir, things are not good. There's some trouble at home. What kind of trouble? Dustin's forehead creased slightly with worry. I'm not sure of the exact situation, but there are a lot of people outside our house and 2 excavators. It seems like they are going to forcibly demolish our house. Forced demolition. That's going overboard. Dustin's expression darkened. Try to hold them back. I'll be there immediately. It's no use. They're starting. While Abigail was speaking, she seemed to notice something and cried out, "You bastards, how dare you lay a hand on my father? I'm not going to let you off. Abigail, don't be rash." Dustin tried to warn her, but she had already hung up. As they were clearly in danger, Dustin didn't hesitate when he turned the car around and sped towards Central Village in a rush. 20 minutes later, at the entrance of a 2-story home in Central Village, Abigail held a baseball bat with both hands, keeping guard at the front. She was sweating profusely and panting. Her complexion was pale. It was obvious that she was out of energy. However, at her feet were the bodies of more than 10 men. They were the gangsters she had beaten to the ground for trying to demolish her home. Every one of them at least had one broken bone as they laid on the ground, groaning in pain. The rest of the gangsters were stunned and afraid to approach. Damn it, why is this kid so fierce? She's a female tiger. The gangsters grumbled under their breaths. Although they looked menacing, the gaze showed a hint of fear. They had gotten used to acting haughty and arrogant. Owing to their numbers, everything they did usually went smoothly and effortlessly. They didn't expect to run into a headstrong individual today. A teenage woman between the ages of 17 to 18 had single-handedly knocked down more than 10 of their men. They wouldn't have believed that there was such an extraordinary woman living in Central Village had they not seen it with their own eyes. At that moment, the window of a Mercedes-Benz was rolled down, and a young man wearing sunglasses with hollow cheeks poked his head out. He yelled loudly, "Hey, what are you guys doing just standing there? Take her down immediately. Sir, she's too good. We aren't able to advance," one of the gangsters reported. The young man in sunglasses berated them loudly. "Do whatever it takes. You can't handle a small child. What am I keeping you, useless idiots, for? Get her." "Yes, sir." The gangsters wore bitter expressions, but they could only nod. After exchanging glances, they gritted their teeth and charged forward. "You guys again." Abigail took a deep breath and swung her baseball bat, taking them on. Although her moves were uncoordinated, they were powerful and fast, leaving the gangsters overwhelmed and unable to defend themselves. Ever since Dustin taught her martial arts, she never slacked off. Now, she was comparable to a low-level martial artist, possessing strength and speed greater than ordinary folks. With a weapon in hand, she fought fiercely. The gangsters lying on the floor were a testament to her hard work. Naturally, her weakness was also apparent. Although she had managed to cultivate internal energy, she lacked experience, not knowing how to control her power. Since she fought this battle purely on instinct, it not only consumed her internal energy greatly but also didn't yield optimal results. Had she gone against a skilled opponent, she would have been at a disadvantage. Abigail swung her bat again, and with a bang, it bent the steel pipe held by one of the gangsters and struck him hard on the head. The gangster fell unconscious to the ground with a groan. After taking on the last person, Abigail was exhausted. She stumbled, barely able to keep herself upright. Beads of sweat dripped down her forehead, and she gasped heavily. In the end, she could only support herself with the baseball bat to prevent herself from collapsing. Chapter 650. Good job. You gave them a good beating. These bullies who only pick on the weak deserve to be punished. The onlookers, who were all Abigail's neighbors, cheered and applauded when they saw that Abigail had won. They were often bullied by the gangsters and finally felt avenged. "Abigail, you're too impulsive. You shouldn't have laid a hand on these people." At that moment, Mr. Robinson limped forward, his face etched with worry. "Why can't I? They're bullying us. Do you want me to just take this sitting down?" Abigail frowned. She thought her courageous act would earn her father's praise. She didn't expect him to reprimand her instead. Abigail, you're too young. You don't understand how evil society is. These men have people backing them. The situation will only worsen since you beat him up. Mr. Robinson had a pained expression. So what if they have someone backing them? Do you think I'm afraid? Not to mention, if I hadn't acted, would our house still be standing here? Abigail scoffed. Wealth is an external possession. It's all right if they tear down our house, as long as we are safe. You should always remember that safety comes first. Mr. Robinson said earnestly. HMPH. You're such a coward that you won't even retaliate when someone beats you up. Do you know that the weaker you are, the more you'll be targeted? How long will it take for you to stand up for yourself? Abigail screamed. Mr. Robinson was rendered speechless. As a father, he only wished for his daughter's safety. It didn't matter if he was wronged. I didn't expect you to have some skills, little brat. Suddenly, the young man in sunglasses opened the car door and got out. Behind him were two burly bodyguards dressed in suits. And who are you? Abigail gripped her baseball bat once more, her expression wary. I'm Chad Miller from the Charging Tiger Gang. You just beat up my men earlier. The young man in sunglasses said nonchalantly. The Charging Tiger Gang. The onlookers' expressions fell with his revelation. The Charging Tiger Gang was one of the 4 biggest gangs in Millsburg. They were even stronger than the Flame Dragon Gang. They mainly engaged in illicit activities and recruited vile people. Notorious for the brutal methods, anyone who resisted the Charging Tiger Gang would suffer unimaginable pain. Over time, they became untouchable as their reputation spread far and wide. Just the mention of the gang sent fear through the crowd. So what if you're from the Charging Tiger Gang? I'm not afraid of you. Abigail raised her bat, her gaze determined. Chad chuckled. I admire your bravery, so I have decided to give you a chance. With a grin, he said, as long as you agree to be my slave and serve me day and night, I'll let the both of you go. How about it? What a load of crap. Get lost, before I make you. Abigail bellowed. You little brat, I'm trying to be kind here. I dislike being rejected. The consequences will be severe if you make me angry. Chad's expression was grim. Sir Chad, let's talk this out. Suddenly, Mr. Robinson rushed up to him and smiled apologetically. My daughter is young and naive. I hope you will be kind enough to let her go for her impudence. Old man, who do you think you are? Do you think I'm going to let her go just because you said so? Chad glanced sideways at him. Sir Chad, aren't you here to demolish the house? We'll move immediately and won't take up your time. Mr. Robinson said as he hunched forward. A tit for tat. I want both the house and your daughter. If you don't want to die, then get lost. Chad was losing his patience. Sir Chad. I told you to get lost. Mr. Robinson was about to plead when Chad raised his hand and delivered a resounding slap, knocking Mr. Robinson to the ground. Dad. Abigail's face twisted in anger. How dare you hit my dad? I'm going to fight you to death. She gritted her teeth and charged forward furiously as she got closer. She lifted her baseball bat and aimed it at Chad's head. No. Mr. Robinson exclaimed in alarm. Just when it seemed like the bat was going to reach Chad, one of the bodyguards extended a hand out and grabbed the bat with a gentle squeeze. They heard a crisp-sounding crack. The bat, which was as thick as an arm, was crushed instantly, leaving wood chips scattered all over the ground.